Well, hello, everyone. Happy Sunday, and welcome to another edition of Effed Up News. Effed Up News is a stream that I do on most Sundays where I talk about some of the news stories from the week and all that good stuff. Now, we skipped last week because I instead ended up streaming a crazy webinar from the Democrats in New Hampshire in which they were attacking the Free State Project and all this stuff. You can go watch. It is a super entertaining webinar. If you missed Effed Up News last week, go watch that webinar. I promise you it's worth it. But we're back this week, and we've got a whole bunch of stories to cover. I've got critical race theory. I've got Project Veritas. I've got Kyle Rittenhouse. I have even got a group of moms that are bribing people to expose the teaching of critical race theory in schools. But before we jump into all that, just a few quick notes. Guys, just a programming note. So, like I said, I do Effed Up News every Sunday that I'm available to do it. I just want to let you guys know now, I'm not 100% that I'm going to be doing it next Sunday, and that's simply because I'm going to be in London, England next Sunday, gallivanting around. If you are in the greater London area, I will actually be holding a meetup next Sunday at around 3 p.m. London time, whatever time zone that is. You can find out more information about that meetup in my locals community, just at a bar near my hotel. No big deal. Come hang out, come have a drink. But I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do the stream from London. I'm really going to try. I'm going to try my damnedest to do the stream next week because of time differences. We're going to see how it works out. But let's dig into the stream from this week. We have got a ton of stuff to cover. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you guys there are a couple ways that you can support the work I'm doing. The first way, possibly the more fun way, is to pre-order my book. I have a book coming out next year called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against woke insanity in your life. The pre-order for the hardcover of the book is currently available on Amazon. I've put the link in the description or pinned to the top of the chat. If you are watching on YouTube, please make sure you pre-order that book if it's something that you're interested in. It's got case studies. It's got a decoder for the woke. It's got a chapter on what to do if you're canceled. It's got a chapter on how to take care of yourself while you're fighting back so you can maintain some semblance of sanity. And that will be coming out next year. And of course, you can always support the work I'm doing by joining my locals community. Now, locals is free to join. You can join at kb.locals.com. It's in the ticker right down below. But if you want to support the work I'm doing and unlock all of the features in locals, make sure you head over to kb.locals.com/support, and you can support by becoming a monthly member at $5 a month or more if you're inclined, but you don't have to. You can support at $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. And of course, you can make a one-time gift if that's your inclination as well. Guys, I cannot do this like I do it without my support in locals. And I've got a goal. I have a goal. I have an ambitious goal, but I think it's an achievable goal. I would like to get 100 new supporters in my locals community by the end of the year. Again, I know it's ambitious. I know the holidays are coming, but I would really like to get 100 new supporters in the community. I will be doing some raffles to support this. I will be doing some giveaways to support this. So make sure you're at least joined up as a free member for right now. Locals is the best place on the internet. It's the only place where there are no trolls. Nothing like that. So guys, I really do appreciate it. Thanks for helping me out with that. All right, let's dig into our news stories because we have a metric ton of them to talk about this week. And we're going to start off with critical race theory craziness. Now, I know we've all been on a little bit of a high since election, especially with that result in Virginia, which was really, really, really great. And I do actually generally feel like the energy has changed. Does anyone else have that feeling? Like the energy has changed? I really feel like things are going in the right direction, but always remember that just because we might like a result here or there, we might be getting some momentum, and we're getting a lot of momentum right now with these parents groups. Parents are doing such an amazing job. Always remember that this is not a sprint. This is not a battle that's going to be won overnight. This is a marathon. And the woke are going to keep coming back and hitting us again and again and again and again. And in Scottsdale, Arizona this past week, they were giving it their damnedest. This was in the Daily Caller. Scottsdale school board member publicized parents' social security numbers, divorce proceedings, and financial records in order to track outspoken parents. You know how you guys always say, you're going to get the most flack when you're over the target? Right now, there are a lot of parents groups out there that are right over the target. And they're going to start to experience more attacks like this. This is what started the nonsense in Virginia. Do you guys remember? This is actually what started the nonsense in Virginia. Was a woman on the Loudoun County School Board named Beth Bartz was part of parents who were organizing, not just parents, but like school members, school board members who were organizing against the outspoken parents in the community. Okay, this is not the first time this has happened. This is not the last time this is going to happen either. Parents with children enrolled in the Scottsdale Unified School District were appalled when they uncovered that one of the district's school board members had editing access to a Google Drive that included personal pictures and information on a slew of outspoken parents, including their social security numbers, divorce proceedings, and financial records. Mother Kim Stafford uncovered a Google Drive link when school board president Jan Michael Greensburg sent her an email accusing her of anti-Semitic comments against billionaire George Soros. Greensburg sent Stafford a screenshot of his desktop, which included a since deleted Google Drive URL reviewed by the Daily Caller. This drive was available to anyone who had the link. Stafford shared the link with her friends, including mother Amanda Ray, who told the Daily Caller she was disgusted when she saw that the drive included pictures of her 8 and 10-year-old daughters. Parents have since dubbed the Google Drive an online dossier. The folders housed within the dossier are labeled SUDU or SUSD wackos, press conference psychos, anti-mask lunatics, among others. Included under press conference psychos was a video that shows parents calmly holding signs that read CRT is racist and SUSD, we demand transparency. Of course, deeply psychotic behavior to point out the critical race theory, which it is racist, and also deeply psychotic behavior to demand transparency among school officials. The dossier takes specific aim at a concerned parents group, community advocacy network, administrators and founders of CAN's active, and CAN is just like, there are better like acronyms to have, let's just be honest. CAN's active Facebook page has folders dedicated to screenshots of their Facebook comments, pictures of them with their husbands, and in some cases, financial records. Ray, one of the concerned parents and leaders of CAN, was a top target of the online dossier. The folder has a credit deed of trust from the Desert Financial Credit Union, her mortgage information on Ray's Airbnb property, and photos of her children. This is like next level obsession and espionage. It really is. Ray told the Daily Caller that her first dust up with the school board was in January when she criticized Greenberg for making a political rant during the school board meeting that was supposed to be nonpartisan. She feels she's been unfairly doxxed by the publication of her information. I'm just a parent, she says. I'm not a school official. Parents have been largely concerned with the school board's handling of mask mandates and their alleged lack of transparency. Other posts detailed in the Google Drive include a PDF with members and moderators in CAN's Facebook group, the personal documents that show portions of the parents' social security numbers. Social security numbers. Parents sharing pro-Trump signs and Thomas Sowell quotes. Oh no, not that. Anything but quotes from a black economist. And one parent's divorce proceedings. The dossier also appeared to harbor opposition work against Amy Carney, a concerned parent who announced recently she plans on running for the Scottsdale Unified School Board in November 22. So essentially, guys, these parents, these woke parents, are not messing around. And don't expect this to be an isolated incident. Again, like the left only knows how to fight. They are going to use this tactic every single time. But what I want to tell you guys is if you are in one of these parents groups, do not allow this to intimidate you. You cannot allow this to intimidate you. You have to know that you are fighting for what is right, what is fair, what is just, and when you are fighting for things that actually matter, people are going to come at you. And it sucks. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a good situation, right? It sucks to have to decide between, do I stand up for the rights of my children, or do I get doxxed by crazy people? But sadly, this is the land in which we live. Now, there are lots of measures that you can take to make sure your private information is locked down as much as possible. But I want to implore you guys, listen, I never wanted to be in the public at all, not in any way. And it's been almost 2 years now that I've been kind of a public person. Kind of. I'll use kind of. Like I don't really I don't like kind of is enough, right? But I've had crap like this happen to me. And what I want you to hear is that it's not that bad. It's really not. It's not the end of the world. And I would not give up being outspoken on this issue for anything. Least of all having to deal with nonsense like this. I know when you're on the other side of it, maybe this stuff hasn't happened to you before. You might feel really intimidated by it. It might seem really scary. You might say, "Oh, I don't want my private information to be public." Well, guess what, dude? Join the club. We don't do this because it is convenient. We do this because it is necessary. And there are more of us than there are of them. And you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and know you stood up for the right thing. And if you stand up and hold your ground, you are going to have so many people who have your back and will work to protect you and look out for you. You have no idea. So, crazy stuff like this is going to happen, but I wanted to cover this story to make sure you guys heard from someone that don't let this scare you off. This is the natural evolution of this thing that we're in. Because they're not going to stop this fight anytime soon. In fact, we now know, I actually knew this weeks ago, but it is now eminently public that the White House coordinated to make sure that infamous memo from the National School Board Association was written to begin with. Now, to back up, for those of you who maybe you're new and you were living under a rock when this happened, because this is like inside baseball stuff. This is inside baseball stuff. But essentially what happened is what was it even? A couple months ago now? A couple months ago, the National School Board Association wrote a memo to the White House and the Justice Department saying, "Hey, can you guys do us a solid and label parents who are at school board meetings domestic terrorists? Okay, thanks, bye." And we were all really upset about that. And then Merrick Garland in the Justice Department wrote back a memo saying, "Sure, we will label parents as domestic terrorists." Obviously, I'm paraphrasing. That wasn't exactly what was written. But at the time, there was a lot of like DMs and things going back and forth in the anti-CRT people that are fighting back against this. We all suspected that the White House coordinated with the president of the NSBA to write that memo. Every single one of us suspected it. And then Parents Defending Education did a FOIA request and they found out that, yep, there was coordination. And now finally, at long last, that coordination is being reported in the mainstream media. So let's just make sure everyone's clear on what happened. The memo that the National School Board Association wrote asking that parents be labeled as domestic terrorists did not start at the National School Board Association. It started at the White House. The White House asked the National School Board Association to write that memo so that the White House could then respond to it. That's what happened. Let's read this story from Fox News, NSBA coordinated with White House DOJ before sending notorious domestic terrorist letter, according to emails. Newly released internal emails reveal that the National School Board Association coordinated with the White House and the Department of Justice before sending President Biden the notorious letter that compared concerned parents to domestic terrorists. Emails provided to Fox News show the NSBA had coordinated with the White House weeks beforehand. Viola Garcia, the NSBA president, whom the Department of Education later named to a federal board, sent a memo to the NSBA members on October 11th, but dated October 12th. Oh, maybe it was only a month ago. Time passes. God, I have no sense of time anymore. Side note, does anyone have no sense of time anymore? I really don't. Maybe it's just because I sit in my house all the time reading the news. That's it. Anyway, Viola Garcia, the NSBA president, who the Department of Education later named to the federal board, sent a memo to the NSBA members on October 11th, but dated October 12th, providing a timeline of the NSBA's interaction with the White House ahead of the letter to Biden, which the NSBA sent on September 29th. 5 days later, on October 4th, the DOJ issued a memo directing law enforcement to investigate threats to school boards. On October 22nd, the NSBA issued an apology for the letter. And it's worth noting that something but like at least a dozen states at this point have actually pulled out of the National School Board Association because of this memo, up to and including my state of New Hampshire. Concern over the current climate for school board members is also a top priority as disruption at school board meetings grows and members face growing threats, Garcia wrote at the time, according to the memo obtained by Parents Defending Education through a Freedom of Information Act request. I don't know why it took Fox News so long to report on this because I feel like Parents Defending Ed got those emails like weeks ago. So I don't know why it took Fox News so long to report on this, but whatever. I guess what can you do? Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's better to celebrate that people show up to the party rather than pointing out how effing late to the party they were. In a September 14, 2021 meeting of the NSBA Organization of State Association Executive Directors Liaison Group, they were informed there had been a meeting with White House staff that morning, and the NSBA was preparing to send a letter to the president. So you know what this is saying? On September 14th, the NSBA met with the White House, and as a result of that meeting, they were preparing to send a letter that later became this infamous memorandum. Subsequently, on September 17, 2021, the interim executive director emailed notice to the State Association executive directors that indicated a letter requesting federal assistance would be sent. In a response to the letter sent by the NSBA on October 4th, the Attorney General announced in a memorandum widely shared through the U.S. Department of Justice that he was ordering all U.S. attorney offices and local FBI offices to reach out to state and local law enforcement officials to coordinate efforts on this problem within 30 days of the memorandum. Blah, blah, blah. Another email exclusively sent to Fox News revealed the NSBA had discussed the issue with the White House for weeks before sending the letter. Garcia and Chip Slavin, an NSBA executive, altered the text of the letter to satisfy the curiosity of White House staff. In talks over the last several weeks with the White House, they requested additional information on some of the specific threats, so the letter also details many incidents that had been occurring. So just to put a real fine point on it, excuse me. So just to put a real fine point on it, the NSBA had a meeting with the White House. Then the NSBA decided to write this memo. Then the NSBA coordinated with the White House to write the memo and made edits that the White House asked for. Now, why would the White House ask for this? Because they wanted Merrick Garland to be able to respond. This was like This was like just trying to plan a little political show for everyone. That's all this is. That's all it ever is. Anytime stuff like this happens that seems crazy and ridiculous, it's because they're trying to put on a little political show. America was set up based on government being a necessary evil. We have forgotten about the evil and overemphasized the necessary. I think that is 100% correct, which is why I, as you guys know, absolutely support defunding the schools because I don't think the government should have any business in education. I think it's the only way we solve the problem. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll take school choice in the meantime. I'm not being unrealistic. I don't think we're going to get to defunding the schools and eliminating the Department of Education overnight. I just don't. But I do want people to understand that this is not a fixable problem. It's not. The greatest trick the teachers unions ever played were convincing the public that teachers are not government employees. If your children go to public schools, your children are going to government schools. They are built and are achieving the specific goal of making your kids malleable to support whatever the state wants them to support. It's simply the way it is, guys. And it is not a fixable problem. This has been building for decades and decades and decades. There is not a teacher pool that we have available to us in order to fix this problem. Because the vast majority of teachers that are teaching in the public schools are indoctrinated into this crazy, crazy, crazy ideology. Just the way it is. But it's not just teachers. It's not. Guess what? The military as well. Now, the military has been woke for some time. This is not new. It's not new. It is just the latest development in the United States military completely going woke, and it's hit the last bastion of any sort of like, I hate to say masculine because I know there are women Marines, but come on, man. Is there any more masculine, a masculine branch of the armed services than the United States Marine Corps? But the Marine Corps is going woke. This on NPR. The Marine Corps is reinventing itself to reflect America, says a top general. Now, what could possibly go wrong? I swear to God, China is going to red dawn our asses, and we're not going to be able to stop them. Now, I don't actually mean that literally. I don't think China's going to parachute in, try to do a land battle. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think they're going to do it. I think if China came at us, our military would not know what to do. I don't think they would stand a chance. I really don't. That's maybe I'm just being a negative Nelly, but I don't think so. Hang on. Let's read about what's going on in the Marines. By the way, I don't care how the guy actually looks. There is not a single man on this planet that looks bad when he is put into a Marine Corps uniform. I just want to say that. I don't care. Don't care how he looks in real life. He puts on a Marine Corps uniform. My God. I'm just saying. The Marine Corps, the smallest U.S. military force, has plans for a big overhaul designed to address its lack of diversity and problems with retaining troops. Well, I'm sure going woke will absolutely help with their retention. The goal that's driving what amounts to a cultural shift within the service is for the Marines to reflect America, to reflect the society we come from, says General David Berger, Commandant of the Marine Corps, in an interview with NPR's Morning Edition. Yes, Sin, I agree. It's the Marine dress uniform that's the best. It is. The Marine dress uniform is like, it is. It's true. It's true. It's not a matter of being politically correct or woke, he said. Oh, really? I wonder why he felt the need to clarify that. The core of the U.S. of America's strength lies in its diversity, Berger said, adding, the same is true for the military. Our advantage militarily is on top of our shoulders. It's not actually our equipment. We are better than anyone else, primarily because we don't all think exactly alike. We didn't come from all the same backgrounds. Well, that's actually always been the case before. And I'm not going to argue that the military was always like a perfect bastion of inclusion. That's not my argument at all. I'm sure there are steps that could be taken. However, just as a reminder, and I say this as a legitimate organizational psychologist, there is no evidence that diversity training actually increases diversity. There is no evidence that diversity training actually increases inclusion. There is no evidence that diversity training actually increases belonging or team cohesion or psychological safety on teams or any of those things. There is zero evidence. And I've looked. I looked up and down. Can't find it. If someone wants to provide me with evidence, leave it in a comment. I will make sure to take a look. His new plan, titled Talent Management 2030, outlines measures the Corps will implement to boost recruitment and improve career flexibility. About 75% of troops leave the Marine Corps at the end of their 4-year term, the highest turnover rate among military services. To compete in an age of cyber warfare and space based weaponry, the Marine wants to shake up its manpower model that historically prized youth, physical fitness, and discipline over education, training, and technical skills. So, is the Marine Corps saying it no longer values physical fitness? Did I miss the point of the Marine Corps in the first place? According to a new plan, the aim is to grow a corps that is more intelligent, physically fit, cognitively mature, and experienced. I mean, that's not necessarily bad. The capabilities that we think we're going to need are a force that's able to operate in a much more distributed. See, I don't actually think that this is bad. Listen, this is kind of one of those things where, like, I actually don't think their intentions are bad. I just think how they're going about it is not going to meet the goal that they have. I don't get it. There is no evidence that diversity training is going to lead to any of those things. But the focus on physical fitness remains as important as ever, Berger said, with a boot camp demanding the same challenge for officers in the officer candidate school. All right. It will take time, he said, before the Marine Corps senior leadership starts to look like America, due in part to the fact that the Marine Corps didn't open to combat roles for women until 2016, the last military branch to do so. In 2019, less than 10% of active duty Marines were females. The other services are 20 to 25% range. We're a purely combat force, he says, a distinction that separates the service from others. We were built under a different set of circumstances, but that is changing. All right. So we'll see what's going to happen with the Marine Corps. Guys, just as a reminder, if you haven't already, please make sure you mount that like button. And please make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you're watching on, whether that be YouTube or Rockfin or Odyssey or even Facebook. I don't understand why I'm still on Facebook, but, there I am. It is what it is. George Andre Veloso Nunez says, were you trying to prove the null hypothesis? Well, we should always be trying to prove the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is basically, guys, if you don't know, like the null hypothesis is like, basically says there's no correlation. If you're trying to say, does X affect Y? The null hypothesis is basically, no, X doesn't affect Y. That's what you should always be trying to prove when you're doing experiments. Not that something happened. You should never be trying to prove that something happened. This is something the woke left gets wrong all the time when they say science. Science, science, science. All right. Let's get into one of the big stories of the week. Project Veritas. So, Project Veritas had their... This is messed up. This is legitimately screwed up. Project Veritas had their offices raided by the FBI. Some Project Veritas employees had their homes raided by the FBI, apparently because Project Veritas allegedly had Ashley Biden's diary, which they never released, and they couldn't authenticate it. But nonetheless, the FBI came banging down their doors under the guise of getting back Ashley Biden's diary, when in fact, it more so looks like they're just persecuting their political enemies. We're going to read a little bit of this article in the New York Times, and then we're going to talk about what it means that this article appeared in the New York Times. Adrian, I'm doing this off the cuff, okay? I'm doing it off the cuff. That's all it is. Yes, it was not a perfect explanation of the null hypothesis. I was not expecting to have to explain it. All right. Project Veritas and the line between journalism and political spying. Documents show how the conservative group worked with lawyers to gauge how far its deceptive reporting practices could go before running afoul of federal laws. Now, as we're reading this article, what I want you guys to think about is the New York Times doing exactly what it accuses Project Veritas of doing? Is this a case of SJWs always project? Anything that comes out of their mouth that they try to use against you is in fact just talking about what they're doing to you? Let's read a little bit. We're not going to read the whole thing. Hours after FBI agents searched the homes of two former Project Veritas operatives last week, James O'Keefe, the leader of the conservative group, took to YouTube to defend its work as the stuff of responsible, ethical journalism. We never break the law, he said. Ooh, I just misgendered James O'Keefe. We never break the law, he said, railing against the FBI's investigation into members of his group for possible involvement in the reported theft of a diary kept by President Biden's daughter, Ashley. In fact, one of our ethical rules is to act as though there are 12 jurors on our shoulders at all times. Project Veritas has long occupied a gray area between investigative journalism and political spying, and internal documents obtained by the New York Times reveal the extent to which the group has worked with its lawyer to gauge how far its deceptive reporting practices can go before running afoul of federal laws. Now, I'm going to pause right there because does it seem to anyone else like the New York Times is a little bit indignant about the fact that Project Veritas is making sure it doesn't break the law? Call me crazy, but I thought that the purpose of having a corporate lawyer was to be able to consult with that lawyer to make sure that you don't break the law. Why is the New York Times being like, damn Project Veritas, damn them, consulting with lawyers to make sure they're behaving legally? Why is that a bad thing? That is the entire purpose of a corporate lawyer. Anyway, I digress. That's not really the point of this. Let's keep going, read a little bit more. The documents, a series of memos written by the group's lawyer, details ways for Project Veritas sting operations, which typically diverge from standard journalistic practice by employing people who mask their real identities or create fake ones to infiltrate target organizations to avoid breaking federal statutes, such as lying to government officials. The documents show, for example, Project Veritas's operatives' concern that an operation launched in 2018 to secretly record employees at the FBI, Justice Department, and other agencies in hope of exposing bias against President Donald J. Trump might violate the Espionage Act, the law passed at the height of World War I that has typically been used to prosecute spies. Now, here's my question. Why does the New York Times have this? Why does the New York Times have these memos? Isn't the New York Times, in releasing James O'Keefe's private, privileged communications with his lawyers, isn't the New York Times doing precisely the same thing it's accusing Project Veritas of? Oh, but it gets worse than that. It gets worse than that. Mike Cernovich, I've got a few tweets pulled up here from people who were talking about this that I respect. Mike Cernovich says, earlier today, this was on November 11th, earlier today, a federal judge ordered the FBI to stop removing files from Project Veritas's device. In response to this order, the FBI leaked attorney-client privilege communication from those devices to the New York Times. So let's just think about this for a second. The FBI raids Project Veritas's offices, and the homes of several employees, including James O'Keefe, takes James O'Keefe's phone, starts going through James O'Keefe's phone, to the point where a federal judge tells them stop going through his phone, and the FBI is so pissed that they then leak the contents of James O'Keefe's phone to the New York Times, who then publishes an article saying Project Veritas has long occupied a gray area between investigative journalism and political spying. What is the New York Times doing? Seems a little bit like political spying to me. We've also got Liz Wheeler weighing in here. Project Veritas sues the New York Times. Oh, yes, by the way, P.S. All of this is going on as Project Veritas is engaged in an active lawsuit against the New York Times. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. I'm sure that's just, it just magically appeared that way. Sometimes the universe just works out that way, Sure. The FBI raids James O'Keefe's home. The New York Times knows about the raid immediately. The FBI steals James O'Keefe's reporter notes. The New York Times publishes what his notes were. This is nuts. The FBI is leaking O'Keefe's privileged info to the New York Times. Hello, deep state. And then we've got Will Chamberlain. And Will, guys, if you're not following Will on Twitter, you really need to. Because when stuff like this comes out, Will is one of the people whose opinion I really want to hear. Because he's a lawyer and he's a really smart dude. And he always gives like a balanced opinion. If Will is upset about something, then I take that as just cause that I should probably be paying attention to this. He is a person you want to follow. He's a person you want to listen to, even when you don't like what he's telling you. Will was talking about, with all the election stuff leading up to January 6th, Will was one of the few people saying conservatives ain't nothing going to happen. Ain't nothing going to change the election results. And the people that were listening to him knew what was coming. The people who were not listening to him and were re-reading all over how it's not possible that Joe Biden's going to be president. Like, they weren't listening to guys like Will who were telling them the truth, even when they didn't want to hear it. Will's take on it is this. The FBI raided Project Veritas on a pretext and is now leaking their privileged communication to the New York Times. This is a scandal. These are classic privileged communications. Project Veritas asked for a legal opinion on potential journalistic activities. That opinion is a privileged communication. No idea what Adam Goldman at the New York Times was thinking here. He should be subpoenaed tomorrow and forced to reveal his criminal source. I didn't even think about the fact that Project Veritas is currently in litigation with the New York Times. Makes it all the more appalling that the New York Times would be publishing Veritas's privileged communication. If the New York Times has these memorandums, why wouldn't it also have Project Veritas's privileged communications that directly relate to Project Veritas's lawsuit against the Times? This is just a massive, massive scandal. The New York Times, Delinea EST, this isn't journalism. This is straight up theft. And he keeps going there. Will is not happy. But you know who else wasn't happy? Shockingly, the ACLU. You know how bad this scandal is with the New York Times and Project Veritas? Do you know how bad this scandal is? The ACLU, just today, like an hour ago, came out to the defense of Project Veritas. Now, it may not look like it's a defense at first, because the ACLU, the ACLU is like gritting their teeth through this. The ACLU did not want to write this statement, I'll tell you that. But it is a defense of Project Veritas. Let's read what the ACLU had to say. The following is a statement from Brian House, senior staff attorney with ACLU's Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project, in response to reports of an FBI raid on Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe. Now, they start out with a little dig. They do. You need to get over the dig that they start out this paragraph with. Project Veritas has engaged in disgraceful deceptions, and reasonable observers might not consider their activities to be journalism at all. Nevertheless, the precedent set in this case could have serious consequences for press freedom unless the government has good reason to believe that Project Veritas employees were directly involved in the criminal theft of a diary. It should not have subjected them to invasive searches and seizures. We urge the court to appoint a special master to ensure that law enforcement officers review only the materials that were lawfully seized and that were directly relevant to a legitimate criminal investigation. Guys, you know, if the ACLU of all organizations, the wokest of the woke, the organization that has fallen so far from grace, you know this situation is bad if the ACLU is taking Project Veritas' side. And again, you have to ignore the dig. They had to do that. But you know, they were like, ugh! But it's a good thing. It's a good thing. The ACLU for once, maybe there is, I want to take an optimistic look here. Maybe there is just a glimmer, just a tiny little sliver of a hope that the ACLU could actually, follow its principles every once in a while. At least maybe I'm reading too much into it. I tend to give too much of the benefit of the doubt sometimes. Sometimes I see like a small thing, I'm like, "Yes, this thing went right. This is how it's supposed to work." Maybe it'll be the only thing that happens correctly, but I have to give the ACLU credit for this. It was exactly the right thing. All right, shifting gears. Let's talk about Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, I don't know how many of you, I wasn't actually planning on watching the trial that much this week. I really wasn't. But then the judge just like pulled me into it. How many of you love the judge in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial? That guy is the best. Hit like thumbs up or high five or something in the chat if you love the judge for the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Like Kyle Rittenhouse should thank his lucky stars for this judge. Yeah, Schroeder for AG. Exactly. Exactly. So based, this guy. So I watched the Kyle Rittenhouse trial a little bit this week. I definitely watched Kyle's testimony. I actually thought that it was a good thing that Kyle testified. I know I was in the minority on that at the beginning. So many people were so nervous. I think this actually worked out in their favor. And quite frankly, if you're going to argue self-defense, then you need to be able to defend yourself. That's at least my perspective. But it looks like, fingers crossed, it looks like the trial is going to go Kyle's way. And in response to that, there is going to be a massive freak out from the woke left like we have never, ever seen before. Well, not since the summer of 2020 anyway. We know that they're expecting to be riots. And the reason that we know they're expecting there to be riots is that 500 Wisconsin National Guard troops activated ahead of the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. Now, I just want to point out that if the state of Wisconsin had actually activated the National Guard last summer when all this crap was happening, when Kenosha was being burned to the ground, Kyle Rittenhouse would probably not even exist in the public zeitgeist. If the state of Wisconsin had actually activated the National Guard back when there was looting and rioting and burning down of a city, Kyle Rittenhouse wouldn't have felt he needed to go there with a gun that night. But I digress. They're bringing out the National Guard. Hundreds of Wisconsin National Guard troops have been activated ahead of an expected verdict in Kyle Rittenhouse's murder trial next week, Governor Tony Evers announced on Friday. About 500 troops will be on hand outside of Kenosha and will respond if requested by local law enforcement in the event of civil unrest following the jury's decision, Evers said. The guardsmen will be operating in conjunction with hundreds of officers from volunteering law enforcement agencies, the governor's office said. We continue to be in close contact with our partners at local law enforcement, blah, 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 blah. That's pretty much it. The defense rested its case on Thursday, and closing arguments are expected on Monday, at which point the jury will begin deliberations. The Kenosha community has been strong, resilient, and has come together in these incredibly difficult times the past 2 years, blah, 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 blah. Well, we're going to see what the verdict is, but you know, I don't know. I've heard. I think the DA said last week that he's going to be bringing more charges, which basically means they know they're not going to get Kyle on murder one, but they're going to try to get him on a lesser charge. So we'll see what happens. We know that the right doesn't riot when they don't get the verdict they want. Only the left riots when they don't get the verdict they want. So we'll see how that goes. But I wanted to talk about this for another reason. Because, okay, have you guys noticed that libertarians on Twitter are being blocked left and right over this stuff? Now, I was actually pretty much daring Twitter to block me last week. I got to be honest. I was pretty much doing everything I could to bribe Twitter to ban me, at least for like a 12-hour ban or something. I was tweeting Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong. Kyle Rittenhouse is innocent. I was doing this crap all week. I don't know why I didn't get a ban. I really don't know. I know many people who did. So I don't know why I escaped. But you know who did not escape? Was one of the official Libertarian Party Twitter accounts. This on the Blaze. Twitter locked Libertarian Party account over a tweet saying Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong. A rather innocuous tweet was reportedly censored by Twitter for glorifying violence by opining that Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong. The reprimand from Twitter was sent to the account for the Libertarian Party of Kentucky after they tweeted that on November 3rd. The tweet read, watching this trial, it's ever more obvious that Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong. The company said that the tweet had been in violation of their terms of service against glorifying violence and asked the account manager to delete the tweet before the account could be unlocked. We prohibit violence, blah, 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 blah. The Libertarian account later tweeted vaguely about their suspension. And here you can see this. Hey, we're back after our comments about a certain Illinois teenager and how the legal process is going. Still BS. Wonder if Twitter will apologize after said teenager is not convicted. The account for the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire posted a screenshot that demanded from Twitter next to the tweet from a Democratic member of Congress calling Rittenhouse a white supremacist domestic terrorist. And here's really, of course, why I wanted to cover this. The LPNH tweeted, Ayanna Pressley, a 17-year-old white supremacist domestic terrorist, drove across state lines armed with an AR-15. He shot and killed two people who had assembled to affirm value, dignity, and the worth of Black lives. Fix your damn headlines. And then here we can see the tweet that got the Libertarian Party of Kentucky actually temporarily locked out of their account. Watching this trial, it's ever more obvious that Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong. But sure, Twitter is a nonpartisan organization that applies its rules completely fairly in all circumstances. Sure. I bring this up, though, because there are actually a whole bunch of libertarians that have gotten banned in the last week on Twitter. I think this is kind of interesting. Joshua Smith's account got banned, permanent banned. His show has a different account. So if you are following Joshua Smith on Twitter, please make sure you go and follow his show's account. That's where he's tweeting from right now. But there's actually a whole long list of libertarians that have gotten banned recently. So we're going to see what happens there. It's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on. And it's kind of like in New Hampshire, the Democrats are way more scared of the libertarians than they are of the Republicans. Like infinitely more scared. I wonder why Twitter seems to be much more scared of the libertarians lately on Twitter than they are of the conservatives. Something to think about. But there's good news with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, too. There's actually a lot of good news with the Rittenhouse trial. Listen, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial is like the best most effective white or red pill, white pill too, actually. The best, most effective red pill that I have seen in a long time. There have been so many progressive accounts that have kind of like popped their head up and been like, I had no idea that Kyle Rittenhouse's victims were white. I had no idea any of this was happening, mainstream media. Like, they're actually watching the trial and they're expecting to see this, like, awful white supremacist. And instead, they get Kyle Rittenhouse, who may have acted like an idiot teenage boy, because teenage boys are generally idiots, but is not a hardened murderer and is not a white supremacist. And they're finding out how much the media has lied to them. I have seen countless tweets, like the thread we're going to read, in which lefties are like, why didn't I know the truth about Kyle Rittenhouse? Let's look at this one thread. This is from Bill Ackman. I have no idea who Bill is, but he has a blue check. But let's see what he had to say. Last night, Neri and I watched several hours of Kyle Rittenhouse direct testimony and cross-examination. We came away believing that Kyle is telling the truth and that he acted in self-defense. We found him to be a civic-minded patriot with a history of helping his community as an EMT and fireman in training, in his removing hate graffiti earlier that day from a local school, and ultimately volunteering to protect a business during the night of August 25th in Kenosha. Our firsthand impressions of Kyle were materially different from those we had previously formed based on media reports and opinion pieces that we have consumed. I have always been frustrated to read an inaccurate press report about a subject I know well. Yet somehow I continue to believe other articles in the same newspaper about subjects I know less well. Media and political bias are dividing our country and destroying lives. While we have not heard the entire trial based on the assessment of Kyle on the stand, we believe he will be found innocent by the jury. Oftentimes, communities react negatively and even violently after a jury verdict where they are surprised by the outcome based on what they have previously read in the newspaper, seen on TV, or more likely have been served on social media. I encourage you to watch the trial, or at a minimum his testimony and cross-examination, before you form a view of his guilt or innocence. With respect to my own political bias, I'm not a gun owner or a member of the NRA. On balance, I support stronger gun regulations and removing loopholes in the sale of guns. Unfortunately, it seems as though society's view of Kyle's innocence depends more on one's views about gun control rather than what actually took place last August. Kyle Rittenhouse's life is at risk. Justice demands a fair trial. Society would benefit greatly if politics did not enter the courtroom and convict innocent people. And then as a little epilogue, and this is what I love the best. Just got a call from the media asking if my Twitter account had been hacked. That is, the reporter couldn't conceive of the idea that I could believe that Kyle is innocent because I am not a right winger. Crazy. And guys, like I said, I have seen countless threads like this on Twitter. They have been all over the place. And so yesterday I tweeted this out, and I just want to mention it here as a reminder to all of you. There are a lot of people waking up because of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Please don't berate or demean them for not waking up earlier. That will only push them away. Instead, help them see that the media they trust lied to them, has always lied to them, and will always lie to them. You know, I woke up I woke up about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I think. And I still remember the cognitive dissonance in waking up. It is so much easier to want to run right back to where you were, to that beautiful little blue pill comfort zone where you don't have to see all this, you don't have to know all this, you don't have to live all this. We have to create a gentle way for people to land. We just do. And I see so many people when people are waking up and they're tweeting things like, I had no idea Kyle Rittenhouse's victims were white. I thought they were black because the media said he was a white supremacist. And then people go in the comments, they're like, oh, you're so stupid. Why didn't you see? Oh my God. Do you think that helps? I know it feels good. I know it feels good to dunk on them, but it is not going to help solve the problem. I followed up with this. When people are red pilling, the priority should always be to help them graciously on that journey, not dunk on them for not getting there sooner. I beg you guys to keep this in mind. I really do. I beg you guys to keep this in mind because, like, the temporary dunk doesn't help us in the grand scheme of things. It only feels good for a second, and it just pushes someone who could be on our team right back to the other side. All right, let's see. We got a couple more. I'm gonna do a fun one. Some of you might, if you have kids, cover their eyes or their ears. Like, shoo the kids out of the room. This is a not safe for children one. I'm gonna give you ample warning. In fact, while you're shooing the kids, please make sure you mount that like button, guys, if you're enjoying us so far. You can also make sure you're joining my locals community at kb.locals.com. It's streaming by on the ticker down there somewhere. All right. About enough time. People are sticking random objects up their bums is costing the NHS in the UK £350,000 a year. I have to say that that rolling pin's a little industrious. It's a little industrious. Kinky Brits hospitalized for sticking objects up their bums have cost the NHS more than £3 million. I told you, guys, this is effed up news, okay? This is the type of hard-hitting journalism that we cover here on Effed Up News. Experts analyze NHS's records to determine how many manual removal of foreign body from rectum procedures were conducted in hospitals between 2010 and 2019. Oh, so wait. This is pre-pandemic. Can you imagine how much this has increased since the pandemic started and people had to lock down in their houses? And only had the items in their houses to do whatever they... Oh, okay. Reining it back in. We're going to be serious. It's a serious news story, okay? Figures show the bedroom experiments went too far and doctors had to remove some 3,500 objects, costing the healthcare service roughly £340,000 a year. A study found the incidence of objects having to be removed from rectums is on the rise, with cases particularly growing in men. Oh, gee, I wonder why. John O'Connell, chief executive of the think tank Taxpayer Alliance, argued taxpayers will be more than uncomfortable with the rising cost of these surgeries. Wait. Awesome Human says there's an entire YouTube channel dedicated to this. People have too much time on their hands. They do. They have too much time. People most commonly shove objects into their rectum for sexual pleasure. Words I never thought I'd say on YouTube. This is partly to do with the number of... This is partly to do with the number of nerve endings in the anus, making it highly sensitive, and for men can stimulate the prostate, an erogenous part of the male reproductive system. For women, it can also indirectly stimulate parts of the vagina. Which, I mean, but P.S., did you guys know we're not allowed to call it vagina anymore? We have to call it, like, frontal cavity or something. That's, like, the new woke thing. Jenny's getting icky with it, says, "Why do I picture this as a Bridget Jones report?" Yo, dude, Bridget Jones would, like, kill this. She would. The reports by doctors from Royal Wolverhampton Hospitals NHS Trust did not name what objects Brits used. Over the years, metro.co.uk has reported on cases from around the world where people have shoved live eels, glass bottles, an instant coffee jar with pins in the lid, a Buzz Lightyear toy, concrete mix, and an aubergine, all in pursuit of sexual pleasure. In an interview with a former surgeon who spent several decades removing errant items from patients' bottoms, vases, a pair of garden shears, a whole variety of bottles, were just some of the highlights mentioned. The research speculates the rise of internet porn and access to sex toys may be. Well, no, this doesn't even make sense. Hang on. Researchers speculated the rise of internet porn and access to sex toys may be behind the spiking number of cases and inspiring people to try new things. Dude, if they had access to sex toys, I'm going to guess they wouldn't be sticking glass bottles up there you know where. Sex toys are built for exactly this purpose. That's what they're built for. Oh, eggplant. Thank you, M169. I was wondering. Yeah, if they had access to sex toys, this would not an eggplant would not be required. They worked out the average anal extraction costs almost £850 per object. The hefty price incorporates the cost of performing the procedure, including such factors as anesthesia and the time of healthcare staff and hospital stay. Men made up the vast majority of instances, accounting for 85% of all cases. So on this one, I just have to say, you guys are welcome. You're welcome. I had to do it. I had to. But I promise you, we're going to end on something much better. We're going to end on the Mom for Liberty group in New Hampshire, who right now has put a bounty on teachers' heads if they're teaching some forms of critical race theory. Now, as a reminder, hang on, we got George Andre Veloso Nunez. Buzz Lightyear went to infinity and beyond. He did, didn't he? Now, before we get into this article, as a reminder, New Hampshire does have an anti-CRT bill, per se. They do. They did ban some divisive concepts, but if you're watching this channel, you understand, as I do, that you can still absolutely teach critical race theory in New Hampshire. It does not ban the teaching of critical race theory. It just bans certain divisive concepts. However, still, I have to give the Moms for Liberty group credit. And full disclosure, I am actually a member of the Moms for Liberty in New Hampshire. I just became a member like 2 weeks ago. So like I do have to give them credit for this because this is actually it's pretty kick-ass, and it got covered in Forbes, which is pretty great. And you know this guy's like a teacher, and so he's gonna be reading good. Live Free or Die has given way to Shut Up or Else. New Hampshire has set up a system for letting the public turn in public school teachers for a violation of its new anti-divisive subject matter law, and Moms for Liberty have offered a cash reward to parents who use it. New Hampshire's GOP-controlled legislature inserted its anti-language into this year's budget as the right to freedom from discrimination in public workplaces and education, and as many critics have noted, the language is particularly vague, forbidding the teaching of divisive concepts. No, it's not. It's actually really specific. So per usual, Forbes is wrong. P.S. By the way, did you guys know I used to be a contributor to Forbes? And basically being a contributor to Forbes basically means you can write whatever the hell you want and no one fact checks anything. But they fired me and never told me they fired me after like I started speaking out on political stuff. And I just logged onto the website one day and I noticed I was labeled a former contributor. This is how I knew I was fired as a contributor for Forbes. You don't get paid anyway, so it's like not that big of a deal. I was not crying myself to sleep. But I want you guys to know this. Like, being a contributor to Forbes basically means you can write whatever the hell you want. You really can. They don't fact check anything. It's basically like having a blog. That's all it is. Anywho, the language was particularly vague, forbidding the teaching of divisive concepts related to race and gender. The Department of Education has offered some clarifications, but it focuses on the discrimination portions of the law, not the divisive concepts portion. And if the department's guidance really is the whole story, the anti critical race theory law doesn't actually prohibit critical race theory at all. Exactly. Exactly. It doesn't. After Governor Chris Sununu signed the bill into law, more than half of his diversity council quit. Which should be a lesson to Chris Sununu. Side note, which should be a lesson to Chris Sununu not to work with the Democrats, which is exactly what Chris Sununu did in this circumstance. He worked with the Democrats to support the Democrats, not to support the Republicans trying to pass an effective law. While many states have anti-laws that are also vague, New Hampshire has added another layer guaranteed to chill classroom speech. Teachers who violate the law can be brought before state authorities and lose their license if it is found they have discriminated against an individual or group. Okay, so what they're saying is that what the law in New Hampshire does ban is it bans teaching that one race is superior to another race. It absolutely bans that. It bans teaching that someone should be made to feel guilty because of how they were born. Stuff like that. It bans teaching that a group should receive adverse treatment based on the color of their skin. Stuff like that. 100% does ban that. So that's good. My issue is that we all know that that is not the way that critical race theory is mostly taught in schools. It's like this much of the problem where we still have this big chunk that is still allowed in New Hampshire schools because of how Chris Sununu screwed up this law in the first place. Anyway, to farther up the ante, the group has now set up a website to let parents and students to turn in teachers if they believe they have violated the law. Students and parents may fill out this form. Hang on, we'll bring that up. Probably should have had it up anyway. A questionnaire that can be submitted to the state. You can see here. So they have a questionnaire they can fill out to make sure the state knows what's going on. There's a space to describe what action was taken against you that you believe to be discriminatory. That can include any differentiation in privileges, discipline, harassment, and retaliation. It asks the parents if they filled out the complaint with the Department of Education and gives the option of giving race and national origin of the complainant. If State Commissioner of Education Frank Edelbutt's encouragement to turn in a teacher is not enough, Moms for Liberty's New Hampshire chapter has also gotten involved. Moms for Liberty, the national group that started out advocating for reopened schools and an end to masking policies, and then moved on to agitating against CRT, has decided to put a price on the head of New Hampshire teachers. On Friday, the group tweeted out, "We've got $500 for the person that first successfully catches a public school teacher breaking this law. Parents, students, teachers, school staff, we want to know. We will pledge in anonymity if you want it. End someone's career and collect a bounty." The term bounty is not hyperbole. In response to a question about how to contribute, Moms for Liberty New Hampshire suggested to PayPal them and mark CRT bounty in the notes. And I do believe, and we'll look at Moms for Liberty here in a sec. I do believe this bounty is actually up to like $1,300. Hang on. I definitely should have brought this up. I do believe that this bounty is now up. Here it is. Here it is. $1,300 and counting. So if you live in the state of New Hampshire and you want to collect $1,350, please make sure you can reach out to the Moms for Liberty group. But remember, you have to have specific evidence of them breaking the anti-CRT law, which is not the same thing as them as teaching CRT. There are still many, 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 many elements of CRT that can be taught under this law in New Hampshire. They can teach the 1619 Project. They can teach about systemic racism. They can teach America's a fundamentally racist country. They can teach all about equity. But if you have evidence that they are breaking the specific law in New Hampshire by teaching people that it's okay to discriminate against one class of people because of the color of their skin, that they're teaching kids that one group is superior over another group based on the color of their skin, things like that, you can collect this bounty. And if you want to donate, you can reach out to m4lhillsboro@gmail.com and, let us know if you know anything. Let us know. I think it's a great idea. The only thing that scares me, and this is not Moms for Liberty fault, I just really want people in New Hampshire and anywhere else, make sure you look at the anti-CRT laws that are being passed, the specific language of the laws. I just really want people in New Hampshire to know that they are absolutely still teaching critical race theory in New Hampshire. It is 100%. It is not even a question. And also, and people are talking in the chat about social emotional learning. Social emotional learning is 100% in the schools in New Hampshire. And so just because there are some components that are banned, people need to make sure that they do not take that as the end all be all, because it is not. The most insidious stuff that they're teaching in the public schools is still completely and totally legal. And people need to know that, and they need to be honest about that. But that shouldn't detract from what Moms for Liberty is doing. I think it's pretty great. I think it's awesome. I think it's even better that this Forbes contributor was so pissed about it that he did a whole hit piece that is not accurate at all. But that's what happens. All right, guys. One more thing before we conclude for today. I just want to do a quick shout out to Zach2040 on Twitter. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, Zach. Zach, I find to be one of the best follows on Twitter. 16-year-old kid. Maybe he's 17 now. I don't know. He's definitely still in high school. One of the best follows on Twitter. I love this kid. Make sure you give Zach a follow. Happy birthday, Zach. Love you, buddy. That's all I got. All right, guys. If you enjoyed this episode of Effed Up News, please make sure you mount that like button. Please make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on, whether you be on Facebook or Rockfin or YouTube or Odyssey. And please make sure you join my locals community. Again, you can join for free, kb.locals.com. You can also make sure you support the work I'm doing by becoming a supporter on the platform, which unlocks all the features. You can do that for $5 a month. You can do that for $50 a year. You can make a one-time gift. And if you want to go the extra mile, please make sure you pre-order my book, Actively Unwoke. It is now available on Amazon. Don't worry if you want a Kindle edition. The digital copy's coming, okay? It's going to be available. Don't worry. But if you want the hardcover, that's available for pre-order on Amazon right now. That's all I have for today, guys. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your weekend.